"You're nothing to me, he's all I want now," my wife smirked while packing a bag. I calmly said, "Good. Because your lover knows more than you think." I never imagined I'd hear those words in my own bedroom, but there I was, standing in the doorway of our master suite, watching my world implode with startling clarity. I'd come home early from my data analysis consulting firm in Portland, expecting to surprise Jessica with dinner reservations at her favorite restaurant, but instead found her hastily shoving lingerie into an overnight bag while Derek Walsh buttoned his shirt with the casual confidence of a man who'd clearly done this before. Derek was a prominent construction contractor from our exclusive Hillsdale Tennis Club, someone I'd shared countless drinks with during their monthly networking events, someone whose wife Monica I'd helped analyze investment portfolios just last month. The irony wasn't lost on me that I'd been providing financial advice to the wife of the man who was destroying my marriage. "Kevin," Jessica said without even looking up from her packing, her voice carrying that cold dismissal I'd been hearing more frequently over the past 6 months. "This isn't how I wanted you to find out, but maybe it's better this way." Derek stepped forward with a smugness that made my jaw clench, straightening his expensive watch with deliberate slowness. "Look, buddy, Jessica and I have something real here. Something you obviously couldn't give her after 9 years of marriage." He gestured around our bedroom like he owned it. "She needs a man who can actually satisfy her needs, not someone buried in spreadsheets all day." I felt something strange wash over me, not the explosive rage I'd expected, but an eerie calm that seemed to settle in my bones like winter fog. Maybe it was my analytical mind finally processing all those suspicious patterns I'd been tracking for months. The unexplained late nights, the sudden interest in designer clothes, the way she'd started guarding her phone like state secrets. "You're right, Derek," I said quietly, reaching into my jacket pocket to pull out my phone. "I haven't been able to satisfy Jessica's needs lately. But I have been able to satisfy my curiosity about where she's been spending her time." Jessica's hands froze on her bag zipper, and I watched Derek's cocky expression flicker with the first hint of uncertainty. "What's that supposed to mean?" he demanded, but his voice had lost some of its earlier bravado. I held up my phone, showing them both the live feed from the hidden cameras I'd installed 3 weeks ago after noticing Jessica's behavior patterns had become predictably suspicious, always the same days of the week, always the same elaborate stories about client meetings that never appeared on her actual calendar. "It means I've been documenting everything, Derek. Every visit, every conversation, every time you bragged about your construction contracts and how you've been cutting corners on safety regulations to maximize profits." Derek's face went white, but I wasn't finished. "Monica received a comprehensive package this morning, video evidence of your affair, financial documents showing the money you've been skimming from joint accounts for expensive hotel stays, and detailed recordings of you discussing those building permit violations and the city officials you've been bribing." Jessica dropped her bag, designer clothes spilling across our hardwood floor. "Kevin, you can't be serious. You've been recording us." "I've been protecting myself," I said, my voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through my system. "And protecting Monica, who deserves to know that her husband has been systematically lying about his whereabouts while draining their accounts for this affair." Derek lunged toward me, but stopped when I held up my hand. "Everything's already been copied and stored in multiple locations, Derek. Monica has the originals, my attorney has copies, and I've documented every single building code violation you've bragged about during your pillow talk sessions." The transformation in both of them was immediate and devastating. Jessica's cold confidence crumbled into panic while Derek's swagger dissolved into the desperate fear of a man who just realized his entire life was about to implode in ways he'd never anticipated. Monica contacted me at 3:15 a.m., her voice carrying a controlled fury that made my blood run cold even through the phone. I'd been lying awake anyway, staring at the ceiling of my guest bedroom while processing the surreal events of the evening, so when my phone buzzed with her number, I answered immediately. "Kevin, I've spent the last 6 hours reviewing everything you sent me," she said, her words precise and measured like a surgeon making careful incisions. "I need you to know that Derek has been systematically lying about his whereabouts for months, creating elaborate fabrications about emergency construction meetings and out-of-town inspections that never existed. The pain in her voice was raw despite her attempts to maintain composure, and I found myself gripping the phone tighter as she continued. He's been draining our joint accounts for expensive gifts and hotel stays, forging my signature on withdrawals, and I've been covering for him with friends and family because I believed his stories about business pressures. Monica's revelation hit me like a physical blow because it meant Derek's deception ran deeper than just the affair. He'd been conducting a comprehensive fraud against his own wife while mine had been his willing accomplice. Monica, I'm so sorry. I know how devastating this must be for you. I'm past devastation, Kevin. I'm ready for war. Her voice hardened with a determination that reminded me why she'd been so successful in Portland's competitive real estate market. I have insider knowledge of Derek's construction company that goes far beyond what you've already discovered, and I have connections in Portland's building inspection department who've been asking uncomfortable questions about his permit applications. She paused, and I could hear papers rustling in the background as she organized her thoughts with military precision. Derek has been cutting corners on safety regulations for over 2 years, using substandard materials while charging clients premium prices, and I have documentation of every violation because I helped him organize his filing system before I understood what he was really doing. The scope of Derek's corruption was staggering, but Monica wasn't finished revealing the depth of his criminal activities. He's been bribing city officials to expedite permits and overlook code violations, and I have recordings of phone conversations where he discusses specific amounts and timing of payments. My analytical mind immediately began processing the implications. This wasn't just marital infidelity anymore, this was federal crime territory with serious legal consequences that could destroy Derek's entire professional network. Monica, if you have evidence of bribery and construction fraud, we need to contact the authorities immediately. That's exactly what I'm proposing, Kevin. But I want to do this strategically, in a way that ensures maximum impact and prevents Derek from destroying evidence or fleeing. Her voice carried the cold calculation of someone who'd moved beyond emotional response into tactical planning mode. I know which buildings have the most serious violations, which city officials have been compromised, and which upcoming projects involve the highest safety risks to public welfare. Monica's proposal for forming an alliance made perfect sense from both practical and emotional perspectives. We both had intimate knowledge of Derek's operations, we both had legal standing to pursue justice, and we both had powerful motivations to ensure he faced consequences for his actions. What do you need from me? I asked, already knowing I was committed to whatever plan she developed during her sleepless night of evidence review. I need your analytical skills to organize the financial documentation, your technical expertise to ensure the digital evidence is properly preserved, and your witness testimony about Derek's admissions regarding his illegal construction practices. She spoke with the confidence of someone who'd identified every weakness in Derek's armor and knew exactly how to exploit them for maximum damage. But most importantly, Kevin, I need a partner who understands that Derek and Jessica don't just deserve to lose their marriages, they deserve to face criminal prosecution for the systematic fraud they've been perpetrating against everyone who trusted them. Jessica tried to rewrite history during our tense breakfast confrontation 3 days later, sitting across from me at our kitchen table with the calculated composure of someone who'd spent considerable time rehearsing her justifications. I'd insisted on this meeting partly to give her a chance to explain herself, but mostly to document her attempts at manipulation for the legal proceedings that Monica and I were already setting in motion. Kevin, you have to understand that our marriage has been emotionally dead for years, she began, stirring her coffee with deliberate slowness while avoiding direct eye contact. I've been suffocating in this relationship, trapped with someone who cares more about data analysis and quarterly reports than actually living life or pursuing passion. Her words carried the practiced rhythm of someone who'd convinced herself that reframing the narrative could somehow absolve her of responsibility for destroying our 9-year marriage through systematic deception and adultery. You drove me to seek fulfillment elsewhere because you never understood what I needed from a partner, what I deserved from someone who claimed to love me. I let her finish her prepared speech before reaching into my laptop bag to pull out a thick folder of printed evidence that I'd spent the previous evening organizing with Monica's help. That's interesting, Jessica, because your social media messages and text conversations tell a completely different story. I opened the folder to reveal screenshots of her communications with friends over the past 8 months, conversations where she described me in terms that made my stomach clench with their casual cruelty. Here's what you told Sarah Martinez in February. Kevin is the perfect boring husband to hide behind while I figure out what I actually want from life. He's so predictable and trusting that I could probably have an affair for months without him noticing. Jessica's face went white as I continued reading from her own words, her carefully constructed narrative crumbling in real time. And here's your conversation with Ashley Chen in April. Derek makes me feel alive in ways Kevin never could. Kevin thinks romance means remembering anniversaries and buying thoughtful gifts, but Derek understands that real passion requires risk and excitement. I flipped to the next page, watching Jessica's confidence disintegrate as I quoted her own strategic planning sessions with her friends. This text thread from June is particularly illuminating. I'm going to keep playing the dutiful wife role while I explore things with Derek. Kevin makes enough money to maintain my lifestyle, and he's too naive to suspect anything as long as I'm careful about my alibis. Jessica's attempts at interrupting me grew more desperate as I presented evidence of her calculated deceptions, but I'd organized everything chronologically to show the deliberate progression of her affair planning. The evidence includes detailed discussions about your fake business trips to Seattle and Vancouver, your fabricated client meetings that were actually hotel rendezvous with Derek, and your systematic strategy for using my predictable work schedule to coordinate your affair activities. I pulled out bank statements that Monica had helped me analyze, showing the financial trail of Jessica's deception. You've been using our joint credit card to pay for lingerie and expensive dinners with Derek while telling me you were networking with potential interior design clients. The documentation revealed a level of planning and manipulation that went far beyond spontaneous infidelity. Jessica had been conducting a comprehensive fraud against our marriage while presenting herself as a victim of my emotional neglect. Jessica, your own words prove that you didn't leave because our marriage was dead. You systematically destroyed our marriage while using it as cover for your affair, and you got caught because Derek turned out to be just as manipulative and dishonest as you are. Her final attempt at gaslighting came when she claimed I was taking her private conversations out of context, but I was ready with the audio recordings from my hidden cameras where she discussed her deception strategies with Derek himself. These aren't just text messages, Jessica. I have hours of recorded conversations where you and Derek laugh about how easy it was to fool the boring husband while planning your next lies and alibis. Monica and I orchestrated our elaborate revenge plan during the annual Hillsdale Tennis Club's charity auction, a prestigious event that represented the pinnacle of Portland's business and social calendar where appearances mattered more than authenticity. I'd been attending this event for 5 years as Jessica's dutiful husband, watching her network with the city's elite while she built her interior design reputation on connections rather than actual talent. This year would be different. This year, the charity auction would become the stage for Derek and Jessica's complete professional and social destruction. Monica had volunteered to manage the evening's digital presentation system 3 weeks in advance, using her position on the club's event planning committee to gain technical access to the audiovisual equipment without raising suspicions. The beauty of this plan, she explained during one of our strategic planning sessions at a discreet coffee shop downtown, is that Derek will never see it coming because he's so arrogant about his social standing that he can't imagine anyone having the courage to challenge him publicly. I'd ensured both Jessica and Derek would attend by suggesting we needed to discuss divorce terms in a civilized manner befitting our social circle, appealing to Jessica's desperate need to maintain appearances among Portland's professional elite. We need to show everyone that we're handling this separation maturely, I told Jessica, knowing her terror of social humiliation would guarantee her attendance. The charity auction is the perfect neutral ground for us to demonstrate that we're both committed to preserving our professional reputations despite our personal differences. Derek had readily agreed to attend when Monica suggested they needed to present a united front during their own impending divorce proceedings, never suspecting that his wife had spent weeks preparing the most devastating public humiliation in Hillsdale Tennis Club history. The evening began exactly as planned, with over 400 guests including Derek's business partners, city council members he'd been bribing, potential clients, and every member of Portland's construction and real estate establishment who could make or break careers with a single conversation. I watched Derek work the room with his usual confidence, glad-handing city officials and discussing upcoming development projects while completely unaware that Monica was systematically preparing his professional execution. Jessica mingled with her interior design contacts, desperate to maintain the illusion that her marriage was ending amicably rather than through exposure of her systematic adultery and deception. The charity presentation began with typical footage of local community projects and donor recognition ceremonies, lulling the audience into comfortable complacency while Monica waited for the perfect moment to strike. "Ladies and gentlemen," the evening's host announced, "we'd like to take a moment to recognize some special relationships that have developed within our club community." That was Monica's cue to hijack the digital presentation system, seamlessly transitioning from charity promotional materials to Kevin's hidden camera footage that she'd expertly edited for maximum impact and devastation. The ballroom fell into stunned silence as Derek's voice filled the space through the professional sound system. "Jessica, you have no idea how good this feels after dealing with that boring husband of yours. The guy analyzes everything to death instead of just taking what he wants." The footage continued with Derek bragging about his illegal construction practices while Jessica encouraged his criminal confessions. "Those city inspectors are so easy to buy off, it's almost insulting. I slip them $2,000 and suddenly all my safety violations disappear from their reports." The audience watched in horrified fascination as Derek detailed his systematic bribery schemes and tax evasion strategies while Jessica laughed and praised his criminal cleverness. Monica had timed the presentation perfectly, capturing over 20 minutes of the most damaging conversations before transitioning to financial documents showing Derek's systematic theft from city contracts and his manipulation of building permits through corruption. The ballroom erupted into chaos as Derek's business partners realized they'd been unknowingly involved in criminal enterprises, city officials panicked about their own legal exposure, and potential clients fled from any association with Derek's contaminated reputation. Jessica tried to escape through a side door, but found herself surrounded by interior design colleagues who just watched her mock her husband's integrity while celebrating criminal behavior. Derek's attempts to explain or minimize the footage were drowned out by the sound of his entire professional network abandoning him in real time. Jessica desperately claimed she was pregnant during our final confrontation 2 weeks after the charity auction disaster, sitting in our living room with tears streaming down her face as she played what she clearly believed was her ultimate trump card for manipulation and reconciliation. I'd expected this move because Monica had warned me that desperate people often resort to fake pregnancy claims when their other manipulation tactics fail, and Jessica's timing was suspiciously convenient given that criminal charges were being filed against both her and Derek. "Kevin, I know you hate me right now, but we're going to have a baby," she sobbed, pulling out a pregnancy test that she'd obviously prepared for this conversation. "This changes everything between us. We need to think about our child's future and what kind of family we want to provide." Her performance was compelling, but her timing coincided perfectly with revelations from Derek's former business partner Linda Chen, who'd contacted me 3 days earlier with information that transformed our understanding of Derek's criminal operations from simple adultery and construction fraud into something far more sinister and systematic. Linda had worked with Derek for 18 months before discovering his true nature and fleeing his company with evidence that she'd been secretly gathering for months. "Kevin, I need you to understand that Derek Walsh isn't just a corrupt contractor having an affair with your wife," Linda explained during our meeting at a downtown Portland cafe, her voice carrying the exhaustion of someone who'd been carrying dangerous secrets for too long. "Derek has been operating a sophisticated romance-based fraud scheme, systematically targeting married women who are connected to Portland's professional networks and business communities." The scope of Derek's criminal enterprise was staggering. Linda provided documentation showing that Derek had been simultaneously pursuing intimate relationships with at least 9 different married women over the past 3 years, each one carefully selected for their husband's access to confidential business information, construction contracts, or insider knowledge about city development projects. "He targeted Jessica specifically because of your position at the data analysis firm and your connections to major development companies," Linda continued, showing me files that Derek had compiled on potential targets. Derek researched your client list, your professional relationships, and your access to confidential financial information before he ever approached Jessica at the tennis club. The revelation that my wife had been deliberately recruited as part of a criminal conspiracy made my stomach turn, but Linda's evidence proved that Jessica's involvement went far beyond unwitting participation in Derek's schemes. Jessica has been photographing confidential client documents from your home office and recording your business conversations on her phone, Linda said, producing screenshots of text messages between Jessica and Derek where they discussed specific strategies for gathering industrial intelligence. Derek used that information to manipulate construction bids, secure fraudulent contracts, and gain advance knowledge of city development plans that he could exploit for illegal profit. I discovered that Jessica's fake interior design consultancy had actually served as a sophisticated money laundering operation, with Derek funneling illegal profits through her business accounts to obscure the paper trail of his criminal activities. The pregnancy claim is her last desperate attempt to avoid federal prosecution, Linda warned me, but Derek has already thrown her under the bus to try and negotiate a plea deal for himself. Linda's evidence revealed that Derek's operation extended far beyond Portland, involving shell companies in 3 different states and connections to organized crime networks that used construction projects as fronts for drug money laundering. The FBI has been investigating Derek for 8 months, Linda revealed, and they've been waiting for enough evidence to bring down his entire network of accomplices and criminal associates. Jessica's tears and pregnancy claims suddenly seemed pathetically inadequate compared to the federal charges that were about to destroy both her and Derek's futures, and I realized that my wife hadn't just betrayed our marriage, she'd actively participated in criminal enterprises that had defrauded investors and endangered public safety across multiple states. The FBI's Portland field office launched their comprehensive investigation within 72 hours of receiving Linda Chen's evidence package, and I found myself sitting across from Agent Patricia Hayes in a sterile conference room that smelled like industrial disinfectant and broken dreams. Agent Hayes was a 15-year veteran of white-collar crime investigations who spoke with the precise authority of someone who'd seen every variation of financial fraud that human greed could devise. Mr. Sullivan, the evidence you and Ms. Chen have provided reveals that Derek Walsh's operation spans multiple states and involves federal crimes that go far beyond what you initially discovered, she explained, spreading case files across the table with methodical efficiency. We're looking at wire fraud, money laundering, conspiracy to commit securities violations, and RICO violations that carry mandatory minimum sentences of 20 years in federal prison. The scope of Derek's criminal network was breathtaking. Agent Hayes revealed that his romance-based fraud scheme had been operating for over 4 years, systematically targeting women whose husbands had access to confidential business information, construction contracts, or city development plans across Oregon, Washington, and Northern California. Derek's operation has defrauded investors of over $18 million while using legitimate construction projects as fronts for laundering money from drug trafficking organizations operating between Portland and Vancouver, Agent Hayes continued, her voice carrying the grim satisfaction of someone who'd finally connected all the pieces of a complex criminal puzzle. Your wife's interior design consultancy wasn't just a cover for their affair. It was a sophisticated shell company designed to move Derek's illegal profits through seemingly legitimate business transactions. Jessica's role in Derek's criminal enterprise was far more extensive than I'd imagined, involving systematic industrial espionage that had compromised dozens of my clients and endangered countless construction projects across the Pacific Northwest. Ms. Sullivan has been photographing confidential client documents, recording business conversations, and providing Derek with advance intelligence about development projects, regulatory changes, and financial vulnerabilities that he could exploit for criminal profit, Agent Hayes explained, showing me evidence that made my blood run cold. She's facing federal charges for facilitating industrial espionage, money laundering through her fake business, conspiracy to commit securities fraud, and perjury for her false pregnancy claims during our preliminary interviews. The investigation had uncovered Derek's connections to organized crime families in San Francisco who'd been using his construction company to launder drug money through legitimate building projects, creating a criminal network that extended far beyond simple marital infidelity into federal racketeering territory. Derek targeted at least 9 other women whose husbands worked in finance, city planning, construction oversight, or corporate development, Agent Hayes revealed, creating a network of unwitting accomplices who provided confidential information that he used to manipulate markets, secure fraudulent contracts, and coordinate money laundering operations across 3 states. The evidence showed that Derek had been planning to expand his operation into Seattle and San Francisco, using the intelligence gathered from his targeted affairs to identify new victims and establish additional money laundering networks. Your decision to document Derek's activities and coordinate with Monica Walsh prevented him from destroying evidence and fleeing to Vancouver, where he'd already established shell companies and bank accounts for his eventual escape, Agent Hayes said, her tone carrying genuine appreciation for our amateur investigation efforts. Without your recordings and financial documentation, Derek would have successfully disappeared with millions of dollars in stolen assets, leaving his criminal network intact and operational. Jessica's desperate pregnancy claim had backfired spectacularly when medical examinations revealed not only that she wasn't pregnant, but that she'd been taking birth control pills throughout her affair with Derek, adding perjury and obstruction of justice to her growing list of federal charges. Ms. Sullivan's attempts to manipulate you with false pregnancy claims demonstrate the same pattern of deception and criminal thinking that made her such an effective accomplice in Derek's fraud operation, Agent Hayes observed. But federal judges don't show leniency to defendants who continue lying during criminal investigations. Derek received a 28-year federal prison sentence for racketeering, construction fraud, and operating a continuing criminal enterprise, with his entire business empire liquidated to pay victim restitution and federal fines that would ensure he never rebuilt his criminal network. I sat in the federal courthouse gallery watching him get led away in shackles, remembering how confidently he'd buttoned his shirt in my bedroom just 18 months earlier while bragging about satisfying my wife's needs better than I ever could. The irony wasn't lost on me that Derek's arrogance and need to boast about his criminal activities had ultimately provided the recorded evidence that destroyed him completely. Jessica accepted a plea agreement resulting in 6 years in federal prison after her fake pregnancy claim was medically disproven and additional perjury charges were filed against her for lying to federal investigators during their initial interviews. Ms. Sullivan's cooperation in providing intelligence about Derek Walsh's money laundering operations has earned her a reduced sentence, Agent Hayes explained after the sentencing hearing, but federal law requires substantial prison time for defendants who actively participated in criminal enterprises that defrauded investors of millions of dollars. Watching Jessica get handcuffed and led away felt surreal rather than satisfying. This wasn't the woman I'd married 9 years ago, or maybe it was exactly who she'd always been beneath the surface I'd been too naive to recognize. During the investigation and trial process, I discovered an unexpected passion for investigative journalism that transformed my entire career trajectory from data analysis into meaningful work that could protect other potential victims from similar schemes. Portland's major newspapers and television stations had covered Derek's case extensively, and several editors approached me about writing detailed exposés of romance-based fraud schemes and construction industry corruption that could help other communities recognize warning signs before criminal networks became entrenched. You have a unique perspective on this type of financial crime, explained Sarah Mitchell, investigative editor at The Oregonian, because you experienced it from the victim's perspective but analyzed it with professional expertise that most people don't possess. My transition from data analysis to investigative journalism felt natural because both careers required systematic evidence gathering, pattern recognition, and the ability to present complex information in ways that non-experts could understand and act upon. Within 6 months, I'd become Portland's leading reporter on white-collar crime and construction industry corruption, writing articles that led to major reforms in how Oregon monitors construction permits, investigates romance-based fraud schemes, and protects confidential business information from industrial espionage. Your exposé of Derek Walsh's case has already prevented similar fraud operations in Seattle and Sacramento, Sarah told me during my first annual performance review, and the FBI has credited your reporting with helping them identify and prosecute 3 additional romance-based fraud networks operating across the Pacific Northwest. My new career provided something that data analysis never had: The satisfaction of protecting vulnerable people and holding criminals accountable for their actions rather than just organizing numbers for corporate profit margins. 2 years after Derek and Jessica's sentencing, I reflected on how their betrayal had ultimately freed me from a hollow marriage and led me to work that felt genuinely meaningful rather than just financially rewarding. My relationship with fellow investigative journalist Amanda Chin, Linda's younger sister who'd helped expose Derek's criminal network, represented the authentic emotional connection I'd never experienced with Jessica, someone who shared my values, respected my work, and contributed equally to building something real together. It's ironic that Derek's scheme to destroy marriages and exploit trust actually led you to find the relationship you deserved, Amanda observed during one of our evening walks through Portland's downtown district, while his own arrogance and Jessica's greed landed them exactly where their criminal behavior inevitably had to lead. Jessica and Derek had thought they were so clever, manipulating marriages and exploiting trust for criminal profit, but they'd actually demonstrated that authentic relationships built on mutual respect and shared values always triumph over partnerships based on deception, exploitation, and selfish greed.